Good morning. Welcome to my presentation. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Belén Ozarin, and I'm an English philologist, professor at university. Well, the title of my talk is Trauma in Female Migrant Diaspora, in a book written by Katarina Edwards in the 1980s. And in this book, I will try to examine the trauma resulting from the Italian community's diaspora to Canada, following the harsh conditions they faced during World War II, with a particular focus on the complex case of Istria. The peninsula has undergone multiple shifts in national identity throughout its history, contributing to a unique and deeply rooted sense of displacement among its inhabitants. The consequences of these geopolitical changes have left lasting scars on those who were forced to migrate, shaping their cultural identity and their experience in the Canadian diaspora. For this purpose, a unique study will be conducted on the main characters of the novel Finding Rosa. The research will focus on Rosa, first-generation Italian migrant, and Caterina, her daughter, a second-generation migrant who arrives in Canada at the age of 8. This study will incorporate Paul Jay's transnational theory, which dates back to 2011, and examines the variable of migration. Rosa experiences profound trauma as a consequence of migration, a process that exposes her to multiple psychological and emotional challenges. Forced to leave their homeland due to economic hardship and insecurity, she endures the stress of displacement and cultural adaptation. The theoretical framework will focus on the first, the migration-related trauma, the migration and psychological effects on women, point number 3, the female migration in the Italian context. Let's start by talking about the migration-related trauma. There is a variety of documentary evidence of the variability in the exposure of migrants and their resulting level of trauma, but this can occur in 3 different phases of the migrant process, which are pre-migration, migration, and post-migration. The stressors that can cause trauma in the first phase can be persecution, war, fear of death, and fear of negative events in the family environment. In the case of the novel, the protagonist Rosa has to emigrate in search of better economic conditions after the Second World War. The migration process itself is a journey in which stressors are related to access to basic needs, violence, long journeys, among others. And finally, post-migration period occurs from the arrival in the host country. This phase, the phase concerning our novel after our study is post-migration, since Rosa's migration process is not described in itself. Regarding the character of Caterina, her daughter, we study the way in which belonging to the second generation of migrants affect her. The stressors that arise in post-migration must be studied at a social and individual level, and in order to limit the stressor, there may be racial discrimination, limited access to basic needs, or acculturation. The stressors can be included from a social point of view, such as migration policies of each country, job opportunities of the behavior of the receiving society are predictors of migrants' mental health. These ideas are given by Miller and Rasmussen, 2017. When it comes to migration and psychological effects on women, it is important to outline that female migrants deal with multiple stressors, including cultural adaptation, economic hardship, marginalization, or gender violence. The emotional burden of leaving behind the community and familiar environments can lead to feelings of loneliness, anxiety, and depression. Women are particularly vulnerable to gender-based violence, exploitation, and discrimination processes, further exacerbating their psychological distress. This idea is given by Peterson in 2009. The challenges of acculturation often result in chronic stress and emotional exhaustion. Migrant women experience identity struggles as they navigate between their cultural heritage and the expectations of their host country. The lack of social support can contribute to a sense of isolation, making it difficult to cope with the emotional toll of migration. Regarding female migration in the Italian context, migration is a recent phenomenon in Italy. The mass migration in this country took place in the middle of the 19th century. According to Del Boca and Venturini, 26 million Italians migrating from 1861 to 1966, mainly due to the poor economic situation of the country. From the 1970s onwards, the country became predominantly a host country for migrants. Italian migrants to Canada experienced issues of identity and trauma and identity crisis induced by migrant labor. Rosa is determined by being a foreigner in a cold country. Italian female migration to Canada has been a crucial part of the broader Italian diaspora, particularly during the 20th century. Large waves of Italian immigrants, including many women, arrived in Canada seeking better economic opportunities and improved living conditions. When it comes to the methodology, the first generation of Italian female migrants to Canada maintained the conservative and old values that dominated Italy. This study aims to measure the transcultural variable of migration conceptualized by Paul J. in 2011. After migration to Canada in the post-war years following World War II, mothers imposed the same outlaid values on the new generations. The result of these relationships are marked contrasts in the perception of gender roles between mothers and daughters. This type of Italian patriotism, this primary identification of self with a perceived nationality, is alien to me. I quote a sentence given by Caterina. First, a woman, I would say, if asked how I define my identity, then mother, then writer. Why before friend, Western Canadian before Canadian? Roman Catholic, skeptical Catholic, all labels make me uneasy. Katerina often experiences a deep sense of discomfort and uncertainty in her search for identity. Caught between the cultural heritage of her parents and the societal norms of the host country, she frequently struggles to define her sense of belonging. On the one hand, she feels pressure to preserve the traditions, language, and values of her ancestral culture. On the other hand, she faces the expectation to fully assimilate into the dominant culture. This duality leads to feelings of alienation, cultural displacement, and identity confusion. The inability to fully identify with either culture may create an ongoing internal conflict, affecting her self-esteem, social interactions, and overall psychological well-being. Addressing these challenges through inclusive policies and support systems help second-generation migrants navigate on their cultural identity and foster a sense of belonging. Idea given by Finn in the 2020. I quote, "The woman mom dreamed I would become the woman she was trying to mold me into, modest, capable, and accomplished. Victorian lady combination signora. That woman was supposed to be educated and cultured, but to an appropriate degree. She shouldn't be obsessive about reading and writing, and she shouldn't be a writer, a practice Mom judged as frivolous and potentially traitorous. Mom often mentioned a writer she had known in Trieste, always adding that the woman had a wealthy husband and could afford to indulge herself. I wonder now if that writer was Elsa Bragato, who wrote a series of books about Lucino. This is quoted from the page 23 in Finding Rosa, where Katerina speaks about how her mother believes her career as a writer is useless. Having experienced the hardship of migration, Rosa associates success with stability, financial security, and conventional professions such as medicine, law, or business. For her, writing appears uncertain and impractical, lacking the tangible rigors of traditional employment. The results and conclusion about these ideas in the novel is that to this day, these first generation Italian migrant women have bequeathed to their children regardless of gender, a legacy that continues to expect them to shoulder the burden of domestic work. Katerina, who has two daughters, is acutely aware of these enduring expectations and is determined to break such entrenched patterns. She reflects that if she had born a son, he would have been expected to assume the domestic responsibilities traditionally imposed by their cultural heritage. The duality of cultures is unmistakably evident manifest is the generational conflicts between mothers and daughters. These tensions, while primarily rooted in the differences between age groups, are further compounded by significant cultural disparities that shape expectations and values. Moreover, the feminist ideals emerging within the Catholic Church are acutely aware of the contemporary influence on societal debates surrounding abortion, extramarital relationships, and related issues. Collectively, these dynamics illustrate a complex interplay between tradition and modernity, fundamentally shaping evolving perspectives on identity and gender roles. These ideas mentioned by the author Piccini in 1987. It is evident that such prejudices have given rise to radical feminist movements, as well as factions that accept an unwavering belief in female superiority over men. These ideologies, often rooted in historical experiences of marginalization, seek to challenge traditional gender roles by embracing positions that, in some cases, may inadvertently perpetuate new forms of division. While the intent is to rectify past inequities, the resulting movements can contribute to further polarization in the ongoing dialogue about gender relations. It is anticipated that new generations, exemplified by Katarina's daughters, will catalyze a shift toward greater flexibility and tolerance. In this evolving landscape, there is a strong expectation that future Canadian generations will embrace gender equality, fostering a more inclusive society where traditional roles are re-examined and modern ideas of fairness and mutual respect prevail. This last idea given by Savarino in 1995. Well, I hope it's been useful to understand the, the, the vicissitudes of these female migrant women after this period after the Second World War. Thanks a lot for your attention. Bye.